Welcome, everybody. Again, happy Thursday. This is the first session for this new series, I guess we'll call it, that Webgility is doing. I've named it Know Before You Grow. I think it's a nice, catchy term. But ultimately, the goal of these sessions is to, ask ourselves the big questions that business owners or operations employees in businesses might ask themselves when they're, going through growth or scaling or are looking to scale and make sure that they feel confident in doing so. So, to give myself an introduction here, I am John May. If you've been on any of Webgility's webinars or seen any of our videos or called into our IVR in the past couple of years, you've heard my voice, you've seen my face. Whether I like it or not, I guess I'm the face and voice of Webgility. But I've been with Webgility for just about 5 years now. I started an implementation and I have a long history of sales and marketing before this. So I'm happy to talk about this today. The agenda for today is pretty straightforward. We're going to identify the problem, ask ourselves the question, and then see or dive into the signals, as I like to call them, for readiness that can kind of give you more confidence in understanding if you are ready to take that jump or if you are, ready for that growth. And then end with sort of a decision test, as it were, that is just a simple question that you ask yourself and it kind of gauges your confidence. So, I will stop my share and hop over to the whiteboard here and pop it out, make it big, zoom in a little bit. There we go. If anybody's having trouble seeing anything or if you are unable to see what I'm seeing, let me know. The Zoom whiteboard function tends to be a bit finicky sometimes. So, Um, let's just start with the question that we're asking today, right? So, is my store ready to scale? You want to know if you are prepared for growth and what it means to be prepared, what the pitfalls of growth are, and what a lot of businesses run into when it comes to scaling and the problems that come with it. So, I think the first thing to understand is what causes problems when it comes to scaling. Because when you're growing as a business, you might not understand the pitfalls of growing. Like you think, more money means or more sales means more money for me, right? But a lot of what it comes down to is uncertainty. So, following this equation, you spend more money on ads, it makes sense that you're going to get more in sales, right? You're pumping money into your brand identity, you're putting your name out there, people are starting to understand what your business does and what they sell. And that is encouraging more sales, right? That's an obvious, I guess, evolution of growth. When you get more sales, though, what ends up happening is you run into, and I've used question marks here, is uncertainty. It's the unknown, right? You you pump more money into your business, which pumps more money into your sales, and then that causes things to break. And that's what these problems are. So the problem itself, revenue does not equal readiness. So what I mean by that is you might be experiencing like a huge boon in your sales, but that doesn't mean that all of your systems and operations are equipped to handle that influx of success, right? That's why they call it suffering from success, because you might be offering a really good product or offering a really good service, but if you don't have the infrastructure to support the again traffic or influx of revenue, then you're going to run into issues and things are going to fall apart. So, what actually does fall apart? And so we'll start here with a little bulleted list here. The first one is cash. I think that's the most obvious one. Cash. Most people think. I'll just put a little note here. More sales equals more money in the bank. Right? That's what you think. You think I've made more sales, so that's more money for me, right? But that doesn't account for things like that ad spend that you're constantly pouring money into, the inventory that you're having to order when you do increase your sales, and then any fees that are going to hit you even immediately, right? Like all those things you're going to have to, uh, put money towards up front operationally to make sure that you can continue to grow. One, I guess, good catchphrase for this is growth is expensive before it's profitable, right? You have to spend money to make money is the saying that everybody's probably heard. Because you spend money, you wait, and then you get paid. Those payouts are going to lag behind the growth that you experience generally. The second thing that breaks are your margins. Um, so if sales go up, profits go up. Very similarly to cash, right? So fees, shipping, and returns are going to scale faster than your revenue. And then one big thing that a lot of people don't consider is that discounts and promos are going to erode those margins, right? So similarly to ads, you might be running discounts or promotions that are, targeted at increasing your profits as a business and increasing your brand presence and brand awareness. Those are great ways of getting your name out there and cutting into the competition and carving out your portion of the market, but they'll eat up your margins slowly, right? It's just one little piece of the puzzle that's going to kind of tick away at the profits that you see. And then blended margins might hide your underperforming channels. So if you're kind of coagulating all of your data together and just looking at the margins at scale, so across all of your channels, you might not get the full picture as to which channels are underperforming or even which products are underperforming in those channels, right? So revenue might scale instantly, but margins are going to erode sort of behind the scenes or quietly. All right, and the next thing that breaks would be inventory. So inventory, something that you might hear, right, is we'll just order more. That's a pretty logical, I guess, conclusion to come to, right? That if I start to get more orders, I'm just going to order more inventory, which could work out. But a lot of what comes down to, this readiness, I guess, factor is cutting out guesswork. I think guesswork is the enemy here, right? If you don't know, if you don't feel confident in your data, in your own decision making, in again, that infrastructure or operational accuracy that you have for all of your systems, you're doing yourself a disservice and you might be missing, the full picture. Like I said, if you're kind of putting everything together and not getting the full picture individually, you're missing out. So with inventory, some of the I guess the call signs here are like cash is going to get locked up, right? If you're ordering massive amounts of inventory, especially reactively, cash is going to get locked up pretty quick. Forecasting mistakes might get expensive really quickly. Like I said, if you don't know exactly which of your products are performing well or which ones aren't, you might be over ordering some of your inventory and forecasting incorrectly, which is going to cost you even more money, right? So you might be sort of overselling some of your products, just thinking that you're growing across the board when it's maybe not the case, right? And then overstocking and stockouts are going to happen at the same time in that case if you're not prepared from an inventory standpoint to understand which products you need to be reinvesting in or dropping or deprioritizing. All right, and next one would be reporting confidence. Um, our reports will just scale with us. And this one is a little bit more abstract, I think, for most people. I think there's so many different reports that come with every single different channel that you might have. If you're using Shopify, if you're using Amazon, if you're a Webgility customer and you're using Webgility's dashboard, if you're using, reports inside of QuickBooks, there's a million different ways you can, get data pertaining to your business, whether it be from an inventory perspective, a profitability standpoint. Um, but the biggest thing to look out for is that you're centralizing as much as that data and that you have a source of truth that you feel like you can actually trust. So again, confidence is sort of the main theme of this session. And really just scaling in general. I think confidence is the biggest thing, right? But one thing that you'll run into with reporting is that numbers won't match across tools. So if you're using a report inside of Shopify and a report inside of Amazon or inside of QuickBooks, those numbers might not match if you don't have, the knobs tuned correctly, I guess is a good way to put it. If you're having to manually fix reporting or transactional detail, reconciliation, stuff like that, that sort of manual work is going to multiply, obviously, as your sales increase. So the more transactional data you're pumping through your systems and the more manual work that you're doing, the more errors, the more problems are going to come up. And that's just more work that you're going to have to go back and kind of look over to make sure things are correct. And then if I guess this is sort of the worst case, right? Is if you have all these reports and none of them are really syncing up together, people just sort of stop trusting all of them at some point, right? If you don't know which is the right source of truth, people just sort of don't trust any of it, and they trust their gut more than anything, which can be good in some cases, but often can again just sort of lead you in the wrong direction, not give you the full picture. When you don't trust the numbers, you stop making decisions. Not even just making good decisions, just making decisions in general. You sort of get stomach. And the last thing that breaks that I'll talk about is team sanity. And this one probably hits home for a lot of people. When you're growing, you need to hire people. Um, And I think the notion is that you sort of don't necessarily need to plan for hiring. You don't need to have a strategy in place to sort of grow your headcount. But ultimately, hiring when you need to, as I said here, we'll hire when we need to, isn't an effective strategy, right? Because you're going to be reactive. Everybody's going to be reactive. And then instead of planning things out, you're sort of putting out fires left and right. You're, running from one place to the next, not really being able to holistically bring new people on that fulfill the role and have time to, acclimate to the environment as it's growing. You're sort of dropping people into the line of fire, as it were. So, stress increases and the business is growing, but people get burnt out really quickly, right? So if growth makes the team more reactive, if anybody is being more reactive, something is off, right? You want people to be proactive. As a business, you always want to be proactive. Obviously, not always the case. Perfect is the enemy of good. But it's always good to plan for as much as you can, especially with hiring as you're growing. And so that's the stuff that breaks, right? And I've talked a lot about what can go wrong, but I think the biggest thing to look at next is how do you know if it's going right? And I call these the readiness pillars. It's in my opinion, just a sort of a checklist that you can ask yourself to understand if you are feeling like you're ready to scale or if you're prepared for that scaling. And if you're not, that's totally fine. Not being confident doesn't mean that you will never be confident, doesn't mean that you're not ready to scale or that you'll never be ready to scale. But scaling doesn't create problems, it exposes them. I think that's a big takeaway here is that these problems didn't just pop out of nowhere. It's that you didn't have the infrastructure in place already, and the scaling has sort of exposed that flank or that weakness. I sort of, when I talk about this, I picture those old timey cartoons where there's a hole in a little dinghy or a little rowboat, and they're just like shoveling water out of the boat, but it continues to pour in. That's essentially what these sort of blind spots are. And being ready for them is really the best thing that you can do to prepare yourself. So, just to start off the checklist, we'll go with the first pillar, which is stability. Can the business handle more volume? And by volume, I mean more volume in sales, more ads, more returns, all of it, right? Because as you sell more, you're going to get more returns, you're going to get more chargebacks, all the things that come with more revenue. There's more money, more problems, right? So, let's say for stability, are my margins consistent? Do I have any surprise cash crunches? I'm going to number these actually. Makes it a little easier. And then do returns and fees shock me? at the end of the month. I think that's a big one, right? Like, um, typo. That you get to the end of the month and you see the returns and fees, especially in maybe not end of the month, but for those of you that sell on Amazon, maybe you get your payouts and your settlement report, and you might be shocked by what you see there. So if you ask yourself, are my margins consistent? Am I getting surprised by cash flow? Or are my returns and fees shocking me at the end of the month? If you answer, I guess, yes or no, if you don't have surprises, if you're not shocked, but your margins are consistent, that means you're stable. You're feeling good, right? The next pillar is going to be visibility. So do you trust what you're looking at? And that's a big part of what I talked about in the problems, right? Is that you trust the data that's given to you, that you have access to. You have a centralized place that you can go, a source of truth that you can go to and say, okay, this is the story. This is the whole story that I need to be looking at, and this is what I can use to make decisions going forward. So I'm going to do a couple do's and don'ts here. So do's, you want one version of revenue, right? You want one place that you can go to and say, that is my revenue. That is what I can, report to investors and what I can report to, other businesses and tout my success. Two is one version of profit. Similarly, right? You want both the revenue and the profit so that you can understand where your expenses are going. At the end of the day, what you're actually taking home. You want to know which products you have that are profitable, and you want that all in one place. And that's the last part. One place that you can check performance. So you want one place that you can go to at the end of the day, end of the month, end of the week, end of the year, anytime, and understand this is how my business is performing right now. And if you need to look back, this is how my business was performing year over year or month over month. Because that gives you, again, that understanding of your business, that confidence that you know what needs to be done next. And maybe you don't immediately know what needs to be done next, but it can at least give you the signals for, again, which products are performing well, which product line is performing well, which ads are performing well, so that you know what to invest in and what to pull back on, right? At the end of the day, it's just giving you the ammunition to be more confident in your decision making skills or your team's decision making skills. So if your numbers are changing depending on where you look, you're not ready to scale, you're sort of flying blind, right? So I think the biggest thing there is to get that visibility, figure out which system you want to use as your source of truth. A lot of people just use QuickBooks at the end of the day because that's where all the information feeds into. Then they'll run reports through QuickBooks. Um, the third pillar here is going to be repeatability. Does my growth have predictable patterns? Do you see seasonal patterns or, monthly trends or, promotional trends, stuff like that? Do another numbered list here. Does my ad spend reliably convert? That's an easy one, right? Do you see when you spend ads, do you see the return on investment in a definite pattern? Or do you feel like you pump money into ads and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't? Maybe you're doing the same thing in the ads over month, but you're seeing different returns on investment. That is unpredictability. So it would be good to figure out, a solid strategy for social promotion or ads that you can, see a pattern behind and that you can see a trend upward in terms of growth. Second one would be, do my costs rise in predictable ways? This is really good for understanding, which inventory again is performing well and which ones aren't. If you're having to, scale up a certain product because you see that it's selling really well, you should be able to see that in the cost and the predictability, right? So, if you're massively scaling a product and you need to order in bulk or through a wholesaler because you're ordering so much at this point, um, you should see a predictable increase in cost with sort of the counteracted lower cost of it being wholesale. So not everything is going to exponentially increase in cost. I don't want to make that point, but understanding that scaling comes with a track of costs that you need to be able to predict, right? Because if you can't predict it, you're again flying blind, not really understanding where the holes in the boat might show up, right? And the last point here, do you know what happens after the sale? So do you know what is uh is happening to your business after the sale is made? This comes from like a return standpoint, from a cash flow standpoint. Do you understand which products are profitable? Do you understand which products are losing you money? And do you know how to sort of right that ship at that point? Okay, so I think asking yourself, these are very simple things to ask yourself, I think. Again, are my margins consistent? Yes. Am I surprised by like the cash crunch that happens? Do I have a plan in place to be able to effectively counteract that? Do I, have a business loan that I'm able to, make this, crunch work? Am I able to extend myself over through that crunch so that it doesn't impact me? That's one way to do it. And then do returns or fees shock me at the end of the month? Am I surprised by the amount of returns that I'm getting or the fees that I'm incurring from Amazon or any marketplace that I'm on or, my payment processing fees or shipping fees, stuff like that? Are those surprising me? They shouldn't surprise you. From a visibility standpoint, make sure you have one place to check all of your revenue, your profit, and your performance. Bonus points if it's all the same place. Ultimately, something that we talk about here at Webgility a lot is that it's super important to have one place or centralize as much data as you can. We like to use the term omnichannel. That means that you're connected across all of your platforms or all of the platforms that are possible to be connected to, and that you can share data between them pretty easily. And then repeatability. Does my ad spend convert? Are my costs rising predictably? And do I know what happens after that sales process? If you know all the answers to these questions and you're feeling pretty confident, you are on the right track, obviously. And then I wanted to end this sort of whiteboard session with a decision test. And I think this really just boils down to one simple question that you can ask yourself, and that gives you a pretty good temperature gauge for how you're feeling right now. And that question is, if I doubled my orders next month, would I feel confident or nervous? Pretty straightforward question, right? If you experienced a double in your orders next month, a double in your sales, would that make you? I mean, I think we would all be excited to a degree, right? Like that's good. You're suffering from success. But does that make you nervous? And if the answer is not yet in terms of feeling confident, that doesn't mean never. If you feel like you're not ready, that doesn't mean that you're failing. I think the key takeaway here is I'm gonna write this out. Confidence equals or does not equal speed. Confidence is way more important than speed. If you're feeling confident, like I said, you're able to kind of point to all the places in your business that require your attention and that allow you to scale effectively. Scaling isn't a growth decision, it's a confidence decision. And I think this question specifically should encourage a lot of reflection. I think if anybody has any questions, now is a really good time for any questions that you have. Um, Confidence comes from understanding, it doesn't come from size. Being nervous doesn't mean that you're failing. It means that visibility might not have caught up yet, and that's totally fine. The one thing that I want to stress here is that clarity or confidence will come from, connected, accurate data. And that's the whole reason that we're having these sessions and that Webgility even exists is because that's what we focus on. So that is all I had prepared for the whiteboard session. I have some resources that I'm going to include in the email that I'm sending out for a couple of articles from Harvard Business Review. Shopify put out an article as well, and the Corporate Finance Institute that kind of highlight everything that I talked about. So if you want some sweet homework to do and to read up on it. But I'm also going to include the finished whiteboard here, just in case you want to review anything that we talked about, the recording to the webinar, and uh, you'll also see a link to the new app that we released if any of you are Shopify sellers. We just released a new Shopify app called Webgility Lite, so I'll include a link there. We built a Shopify exclusive app that it's designed to keep QuickBooks accurate from day one. So, and it's directly from within the Shopify admin. But I'll leave this open for a couple seconds just to make sure if you guys have any questions. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Um, I think we made pretty good time. 2 minutes left. So if there are no questions, I can give you guys a couple minutes back in your day. Again, this session is going to be bi-weekly. So the next session will be on February 12th. You'll see the landing page get updated by early next week. You'll receive an email invite as well, just like the last one. And then if you have any questions, feel free to email us, call us, let us know. We are happy to answer any questions you have when it comes to e-commerce and getting your data in one place. If you're not a Webgility customer, we're happy to give you a demo of what Webgility can do to sort of facilitate everything that we talked about today. If you are a Webgility customer, I hope that you're also attending our customer webinars that we do also bi-weekly. So those will be every other week. Next one will be next Wednesday on the 4th. But I really appreciate you guys joining today. This was, in my opinion, a pretty successful first run of this sort of whiteboard session. I look forward to seeing you guys hopefully on the next one. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day. Len, stay warm. That sounds insanely cold. So not jealous, but appreciate you guys on and have a good rest of your day.